PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is probably the biggest sleeper hit in video game history. The gaming community was slapped in the face with a cold, hard frying pan and awoke to find something incredible. An addicting, fresh new take on Battle Royale gameplay, a genre that for all intents and purposes, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is probably the biggest sleeper hit in video game history. The gaming community was slapped in the face with a cold, hard frying.
Unlike most conventional IT trade shows, here at Computex we can actually watch people do what we call overclocking. And this year, they're opening up this opportunity to more people like myself. Can you tell us what the setup is going on here?
So what we have here is a Z270 platform with a 7700K Kaby Lake CPU. And the idea here is that we will push this one to 7 gigahertz. So the first step we have to take here is to get the temperature down to minus 190 degrees centigrade. So you take the flask there, which is filled with liquid nitrogen, and then slowly pour it inside here.
It's dangerous. Whoa! How much should I pour?
Continue, it's fine. We need to drop down a little bit more. So now you can see already that the temperature is going down about 2 centigrades per second. So you can see it's boiling very hard. The nitrogen is reaching its boiling point now, so at a certain point it will make a lot more noise and you'll see sort of a lot of smoke pop up. And it's at that point that we know that we've reached the lowest point that we can get. There we go. It's going to boil. So we're reaching the 0 point of the pot, as you can see.
Minus 190 now.
Yeah, and you can hear now that the noise is sort of gone of the pot. So now it's stabilized at the lowest temperature that we can get it, right? Until about 65 ratio, we can do it with 1.855 volts. If you want to hit 7 gigahertz, we're going to need about 1.925 volts. So I would say take the one core active ratio here, drop it to 60, click apply, and let's see if we can get to 6 gigahertz.
Drop. Okay. Lam, am I doing this right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we're at 60.
And,
now.
And you have to look at the core voltage, 1.855, right?
1.925.
I'm really scared for some reason. I don't want to burn this thing.
6.6.
6.6.
One more.
One more. And I see the temperature is still 192 degrees Celsius.
We're at the absolute lowest point.
Okay, cool. Should I push to 7 gigahertz now?
Are you ready for it?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it. Apply. Okay, okay. 7.
Bam, we have it right there.
Okay, that was a very...
All right, so now the system froze up. Now we need to heat it up a little bit so we can...
We're gonna heat it up?
Yeah. So in order to make sure that it can boot fine, we're gonna heat it up a little bit to maybe...
I can't believe you're doing this.
To maybe minus 170, and then we drop down again.
Okay. We're back into Windows now?
Yeah, everything is working fine. So you can see there's no issues with the overclocking here.
Oh, okay.
Crashes at 7 gigahertz, you reboot and you try again.
Okay.
So the another important thing is to we have to hold the temperature in a stable temperature, because if the temperature fluctuates, then the course may be unstable, then all of the things gone.
So the key is to keep the temperature stable. Okay, we're back up. All right, we're 7 gigahertz, yes!
So now we can try to move up a little bit more. Let's say do the voltage to 1.95.
We're gonna go beyond 7 gigahertz?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
So now we're gonna go to the BCLK frequency and go from 100 to 100.2.
Okay, 7.02. Okay, we're gonna go up 100.4. Looks like it's slowing down.
Baby steps now.
Baby steps.
Yeah, we're pushing the limits of this chip.
This is intense. I'm going to try 100.6. Do you reckon that's okay? Apply. Your record is 750.
Yeah.
And I just broke your record.
Yeah, you got higher than what we've gotten on this chip.
No way! Oh my God, this is it. I broke the record again. 7083. This should be a new record.
For this chip.
For this chip. Oh my. And the system has frozen. You can see the cursor's not moving. But this is it. Peter, before we wrap up, any tips you can give to people out there who want to try this overclocking? Like, what should they be careful with?
So first of all, I would recommend to start off on air cooling, then switch to water cooling, and then try to find someone in your neighborhood that's already doing the liquid nitrogen, so he can give you a guide on how to prepare your motherboard and your CPU for this kind of stuff. And then in the end, if you want to do this, just go with it. Just do it.
Good. And Lam, what do you think? Or how? Any special tips? I know you had.
Yeah. So you know, one of our enemies is the water. So the waterproof job you have to done before anything you could do. So you see we have some blue towers cover the whole port. So we need to do anything better to avoid any water on our ships. So if any water stay on our hardware, then we will burn.
So waterproofing is very important. Cool. Well, I think this pretty much sums it up for us today. Thank you guys for giving me this opportunity and also to let me break a record, apparently. Yeah, so this is it. Overclocking at Computex 2017.
Intel keeps very careful track of its internal engineering samples, going to great lengths to ensure that if they leave the lab, it is in pieces so small that they could never be reassembled again. So the first question we need to answer is, how did we get our hands on this thing? eBay, obviously. What can't you buy on eBay? A sponsorship online is Tech Tips. For that, you have to talk to Colton, like Corsair did. Corsair's Dark Core SE RGB wireless mouse features 1 millisecond 2.4 gigahertz and low latency Bluetooth connectivity. Check it out at the link below. So the seller turned out to have been a contractor at Intel a few years ago who, in the middle of a 6th floor renovation, went dumpster diving through the boxes full of junk that was destined for the e-waste pile. Apparently it was a treasure trove of press samples, laptops, and this GPU looking thing that was noteworthy for being blue instead of green or red. You see, by that point, Project Larrabee, this, sort of, had been canceled for years, and how many years depends on which cancellation you're going by. So talking to Tom Forsyth, who was one of the key team members, he figures they got canceled anywhere from 4 to 5 times, and remembers getting these weird memos. Yeah, you guys are gonna see some headlines. It's just a thing. None of you are laid off, just keep on working. BT Dubs, you've been rebranded Xeon Phi, thanks, bye. So, what is this thing? That's actually a somewhat complicated question, but because it's got a DVI port, not to mention DisplayPort and HDMI soldered onto it, it is technically an engineering sample board for Intel's first, and to date, only dedicated graphics card. Now, most people who follow the mainstream tech press believe that Project Larrabee was an abject failure. But as is so often the case, the truth is actually stranger than fiction. Not only was it a success, but it powered TH2, which was the world's most powerful supercomputer for over 2 years, and 10 years later, you can actually still buy its descendants, either in socketed form, as we reviewed just last year, or on Amazon for a cool 1,500 greenbacks. So, as it turns out, the goal of the program never was actually to create a gaming GPU. That was just a workload that was already fairly well understood at the time, because you gotta remember, back in the mid-2000s, the idea of using a GPU as a general purpose computing unit was just emerging. So this idea of using it for gaming was actually just a small part of a business case to build a processor that had many highly efficient x86 cores that could be easily just like slotted into these powerful supercomputers. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been used for gaming. In fact, by the time they wound down the units that were working on graphics, they had about 300 of the top selling games on Steam running on the thing with a card just like this one as the only GPU in the system. And the way this whole thing worked is incredible. Now, a normal graphics card, or GPU rather, uses a lot of fixed function hardware. So if you told it, okay, look, I don't need shaders. Just draw a ton of tiny lines with really nice anti-aliasing. So that's pretty much CAD in a nutshell. It would use only a fraction of its hardware. But with Larrabee, everything is software. So the whole chip is lit up doing that. So that actually helped to offset the x86 overhead a fair bit. This was the fastest CAD card at the time. And it had other benefits. With regular GPUs, you might run into a situation where enabling a particular feature in a game might hit the AMD users a lot harder than the NVIDIA users, or vice versa. So during development, AMD and NVIDIA, they both have to actually guess as best they can what the next couple of years of games will demand, and then try to look into their crystal ball and build their hardware around that. Larrabee, no such limitation. This thing is a full-blown computer with up to 61 quad-threaded cores running a normal operating system like FreeBSD. Like, you could actually telnet into the thing and run a top command and see a list of all the processes that were running on it. And if you were running a game, you'd see, I don't know, 128 or 200 processes called DirectX graphics. And you could do that while the thing was working. So if you wanted, you could cordon off some of the cores and use them for something else, or you could just YOLO it and throw another workload into the mix and then just let the processor manage itself. The only non-programmable hardware on this puppy is the texture unit, which takes very simple commands. I mean, wrap your brain around this. The thing that I'm looking at right here is Intel's first ever DirectX 11 GPU, even though it was built before DirectX 11. So this was possible because all of those graphics card features that are normally running in hardware are just running in software. So you could actually update it to DirectX 11 or DirectX 12 with a driver update. Now, there are some caveats here. I mean, there's a reason that the thing never made it into a computer near you. It wasn't as efficient as a dedicated graphics card for a lot of things. So it only got about a quarter of the performance in games as a comparably power-consuming card from AMD or NVIDIA at the time. But it was really good at certain graphics workloads for a number of reasons. And I mean, if you think about it, and you look at how far off they were, considering that they were effectively emulating dedicated hardware, it's damn impressive. So, what happened? Well, management happened. Intel at its core, is a hardware company. So they wanted all the features completed so they could either ship this thing or can it. Because in the hardware world, making up a 4 times difference in performance is impossible, and you might as well just pull the plug. But the team wanted to work on performance optimization instead, because in the software world, it's not unheard of to go from like 2 pixels showing up on a screen and dog slow to 100 times faster in a week if you have a breakthrough. And it got to the point where they had to have separate teams for performance and for features to get management off their backs. So the performance team actually got Quake running, like really fast. But then they found out that Quake was this weird edge case and the architecture would have to be completely redone. I mean, to give you guys some idea of the dysfunction, at one point, there were 3 to 4 software teams with different ideas and working on different rendering architectures. But depending who you ask, the continued development would have been worth it. I mean, imagine this. Instead of turning anti-aliasing on for an entire scene, imagine if a game developer could say, well, you know what? This sky is not important to be anti-aliased. Why don't we just focus all of our AA on, you know, these characters here or this foliage there? Or how about this? Like, oh crap, that depending on how many of them had. By the way, if anyone out there has the secret sauce drivers or has access to the secret sauce drivers that would make this run games, please hit me up. I mean, assuming that it even works, which we don't know yet. I actually haven't tried this. I wanted to save the suspense for the video. This is like far more postcodes than I'm accustomed to seeing. But it hasn't stopped, and it hasn't like rebooted. We've got some kind of LED on here. It looks like it's stalled on D6, but I don't know what that is. Now, when I talked to Tom, he did specifically mention it's got DVI soldered to it. Now, I don't know if that's because DVI was the most relevant output at the time, so that's like what they used internally, or if the DisplayPort and HDMI were just dummies, and DVI was the only thing that actually worked. So, take 2, I'm gonna run and grab a DVI monitor and gonna try this again. Like, I kind of wonder about, you know, what its PCIe, I mean, would that be even Gen 2 at that point? Like 2007, 2009? I wonder about compatibility with a new board and stuff like that. You know what, I don't think it's gonna boot. Well, that's pretty disappointing. I thought I might be onto something with the whole DVI thing. I'm gonna try one other slot just to, I think there's only one other one out in the wild and some like Russian collector of like weird hardware has it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Not you, a different one. Okay, sometimes it hangs on 79 for a bit and then this thing boots. So that might have been a good sign. Oh, no, that's D6 again.
Guts, a character whose last canon smile was in fucking 1998, is a notoriously famous and critically acclaimed character in the realm of Japanese fiction. Also known as the Black Swordsman, no, not that one, fuck off, is the main character and protagonist of Kentaro Miura's Berserk. We've followed him since the literal moment he was born, growing up from being a weak and feeble newborn child lying in a puddle beneath his mother's corpse, to the handsome, stoic, damaged, and existential Chad we know him as today. I mean, look at that jawline, it's like a fucking sledgehammer. I'm sure that any reader of Berserk will be eager to tell you that Guts is a lot more of a complex character than he may appear to be upon first glance. From the very beginning, Guts is not as he seems. It's very easy to make face value judgments just from his exterior appearance, his imposing character design, his weapon, too big to be called a sword, and his cold, brutish attitude all attribute into thinking he is no more than a violent and single-minded archetypal character. And Guts does follow through with some of these traits, as evidenced by his unrelenting rage, anger, and ruthlessness in combat throughout the series. But this is where all the similarities end. Whilst in the same way these simplistic traits characterize Guts to people who haven't read Berserk, or the people in the series who only know him as the Black Swordsman, in reality, these traits in no way define Guts. They fail to capture his humanity. There's obviously a lot more to Guts than just his violent traits, imposing character design, and Chad tier jawline. He is a deeply existential character who is more than capable of showcasing compassion, loyalty, thoughtfulness, and most importantly, an impenetrable will. There's an understated duality to his character as he develops throughout the series. Whilst Guts may exhibit certain traits and ideologies at the beginning of the story, they are constantly changing over time at each turning point of his journey. Every moment of development he's undergone, piece of dialogue he's spoken, and trial he's overcome all coalesce into making him more of a complex and human character. There are many factors that make him unique. His humanity, character design, philosophy, and extreme moral ambiguity all act in a way that distinguishes him from the vast amount of protagonists we see in fiction today. And that's what we're going to talk about. Why Guts stands out from other protagonists. Now, I'd like to start off by clarifying that I'm not saying other protagonists in Japanese fiction don't share similar traits to Guts. In fact, many do. Characters in Vagabond, Trigun, Bleach, Vinland Saga, and many others are just a few examples of stories that contain similarities. Traits such as the violent brute or strong but silent wanderer are commonplace at this point. But the reason why there is an abundance of characters like this is because, well, a lot of them were actually inspired by Berserk. In fact, historically, Berserk was actually one of the first instances of a well-written anti-hero in a dark fantasy series in Japan. Conversely, I'm not saying that Guts is the only well-written protagonist in Japanese literature. There are plenty of other examples of great main characters in other series, such as actually, wait a second. It's difficult to define what category Guts' character actually fits into throughout the story. You see, Berserk places a large emphasis on the development of Guts' personality and how it drastically changes over time, which is one of its most appealing factors. When Guts is introduced, he fits the threshold of a classic 90s anti-hero. He's missing an arm and an eye, has a gritty demeanor, a dark backstory, and is full of edge. He tells Puck that he's only interested in revenge, and any bystanders who get caught up in his vengeance are weaklings who didn't deserve to live anyway. There are also many examples of Guts being as ferocious, heartless, and deranged as the demons he kills, with his role as the hero of the story always being questioned. In reality, his cold and callous personality is simply a facade to hide his pain. The truth is, Guts is justified in acting this way because of the amazingly written backstory that is the Golden Age arc, giving us context to the whirlwind of emotions he experiences. The odds have been stacked against him all his life from even the moment he was born. He endured an abusive childhood, became an aimlessly wandering mercenary without meaning, to eventually becoming a valued comrade amongst the
What's up guys, I'm BTC. Believe it or not, Hero 28 is just around the corner, and also the free-for-all competitive mode seems to have some issues. By now, a lot of you guys have probably tried out the brand new free-for-all competitive game mode. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of you are, shall we say, disappointed with the rank you ended up getting after completing your 10 placement matches. But don't feel too bad. It appears that Blizzard is purposely de-ranking pretty much everyone. So even the Master, Grandmaster, and even top 500 players are getting placed at Platinum rank when they do the free-for-all competitive game mode. Some players have been getting into Diamond, and even a very few ended up placing into Master, but it seems to be kind of random. Like, there doesn't seem to be any set thing, because again, top 500 players that are playing DPS are still getting placed at High Platinum, Low Diamond, and it just doesn't make any sense. Unless this is accidental, the only reason I can really come up with is the same thing that Blizzard has done in the past. So in the competitive seasons, what they used to do is after you did your placement matches, they would deliberately lower your rank by several hundred points. And it was because they wanted you to be able to experience climbing back up the ladder. And people got really upset about this, so they ended up getting rid of that. But it seems like that's kind of what they're doing with the free-for-all as well. They're deliberately putting most people at a lower or middle rank so that they can then climb the ladder. And as for the new map, Petra, there are a couple of issues with it. The first one is that the map is just too big. You can spend a good amount of time running around and just not finding anybody. I've actually gotten the warning pop-up that says unless you start getting active, you're not going to get experience for this match. And I'm actively moving around trying to find enemies, and I just can't because for whatever reason, they're spawning on the other side of the map or whatever's going on, I just couldn't find enemies, so I was actually getting the warning, which is kind of ridiculous. And on top of that, the spawns are not very good either. It seems like it wants to put you in the same spawn over and over and over, regardless of where the fights are, where you ended up dying, or any of that sort of stuff. And while I definitely like the map, it has some serious problems that are just frustrating to deal with. Unfortunately, I don't think Blizzard is going to spend any of the time and resources required to end up actually changing the size of the map to fix this. The other thing that they could do is make it so that there's more players, maybe bump it up to 10 or 12 per Petra map and keep the Chateau map at 8, but again, I don't know if they're going to bother wasting time with all that. Next up is Hero 28. I've had a bunch of people requesting that I talk about this stuff, and I'm not going to go too much into it just today, but believe it or not, Hero 28 is actually coming up really fast, and I know it feels like we just got Brigitte, but I think that's because there was such a huge delay in getting the character in competitive. But the character's actually been out for several months already, and Blizzard is in the habit of releasing 3 new characters every single year. So we get one in early March, one in July, and then one in November. Now the really good news is that Blizzard is changing their policy on when they will add new stuff to competitive play. Over on the forums, Scott Mercer, who is one of the developers for Overwatch, said, "With today's, this was May 22nd, patch, we made Rialto available in competitive play instead of waiting until the next competitive season on July 1st. In the future, our plan is to make new heroes and maps available in competitive play 2 weeks after their initial release." And this is a big change from what they've been doing. Brigitte was put on a 2-month delay before she was added to the competitive, and the same thing with the Blizzard World map. They waited a ridiculous amount of time before they added it to competitive. And really, waiting that long just isn't necessary. The fact of the matter is, some people are going to practice these new characters and maps, but most will not. And even in the higher ranks, Master and GM, after Brigitte was added to the competitive ladder, there were people in those ranks who didn't understand how her ultimate worked. And it just goes to show that it's not rank dependent. There are people at the upper brackets that just don't bother to learn the new stuff either. And it's even worse when it's the new maps that they don't bother to learn, because then they have no idea where to go or where to defend. Couple of examples. This person spent 5 hours of Brigitte in competitive, and I checked all the other game modes. As it turns out, it was only 1 minute of quick play. So that's how much practicing this person did. Literally 1 minute of quick play practice. And then this person has 8 hours in competitive and only 25 minutes in the other game modes. So people are just not practicing, and these guys are not the exceptions. This is the norm. The overwhelming majority of people that are using new characters never even bother to try them in the other game modes. They simply just pick the character as soon as it's in competitive. Also, a pretty good reason why these 2 people that I used for example turned out to be absolute garbage. Thankfully, they were on the other team. So again, there's no reason to wait the 2 months, and I'm really glad that they changed it. Getting back to Hero 28, I have had a lot of requests for a full in-depth prediction video, and if you're wondering why people would want that, if you're new to the channel, it's because right now we have for Blizzard or knowing inside stuff. I don't. I just make really good predictions. So I will be making that. My first guess is that it's likely going to be a tank, because right now we have 14 DPS. It's going to be 15 once they move Symmetra away from the support category and they put her into defense, because they're going to crank up the amount of damage she can do. And really, there's 3 classes. I understand there's 4 different roles, but there's basically 3 classes. You have the DPS, you have tanking, and you have healing. And right now we have, with the combination of offense and defense, there's 14 going to be 15. And then for the tanks, we only have 6. And then for the healers, we're only going to have 6 as well once the change goes through. But when you look at the tank category, you really only have 3 tanks, and then you have 3 off tanks, or maybe bruisers, whatever you want to refer to them as. So the amount of damage mitigation characters we have is really, really, really low. And one of the biggest problems that in this kind of game, or really any game that has classes, is the tanking and the healing is always kind of falling behind, and everybody wants to do damage. So Blizzard needs to come up with more interesting ways for tanking stuff to happen, so that way we don't have these kind of shortages when we're in these matches and, you know, everybody wants to be DPS kind of deal. Especially right now, because whether it's true or not, the perception is that playing a tank is just a terrible, unfun experience. And I think it's very likely that Blizzard is going to try to address that. But of course, the absolute best character that they could possibly add for Hero 28 is Jetpack Cat. I actually have some really awesome Jetpack Cat t-shirts. If you want to check those out, they're in the store right now. Anyways, guys, what character would you like to see for Hero 28? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out my Discord server. Follow me on Twitch and Twitter. The links for that stuff are down below. And remember, always, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.
Excuse me down there, slaves? Excuse me, slaves? What? I'm a Nordic traveler from the east, and I seem to have just crashed into your village. Could you point me in the direction of the nearest trading post? I'll be needing some supplies to fix my vessel, and oops, my hammer. That's my hammer. That's my hammer. That's my fucking hammer, you white honky nigga. I'm gonna need that hammer back. That's my hammer. That's my hammer. Perhaps I should speak with your king. This must be your king, the one with all the jewels. Fuck you, nigga, I'm the king. Fuck you, I'm the king, nigga. Fuck you, nigga, I'm the fucking king. I'm the king, nigga. Fuck you, I'm the king. I'm the king. Well, he may have a lot of fake jewelry, but you ain't never seen nobody as skilled as me. What? I said you ain't never seen nobody with as much skills as me. I'm sorry, what is your friend trying to say? Fuck you, you white honky nigga. Can I have some ketchup? Why? To put on all these horse browns you guys keep serving me. Horse browns? Fuck you, you the horse, motherfucker. Fucking horses and shit. Fuck you, you white honky Nordic nigga, bitch.
So come on down to the White Honky Waffle House.
praises to the Most High on both sides. I pray to God, I pray for hard, I won't lie. Multi, cause I'm dope tied. Convo and a boat ride. Renting cars for the whole month. Drop Porsche money.
Oh, I can hear the game. Don't think down is. I wonder if that's okay, probably not. Well, I'm gonna have to. Oh man. Guess who has a day got big old poop? I do. My girl.